Long time no talk.
Yeah, yeah. Good finally talking with you.
Yeah, yeah. So whereabouts are you right now?
Physically,
Yeah,
right now
like
I'm in Essex, Ontario.
okay, okay. Have you been? Wow. Well, I mean, I see you've been uploading a bunch of new videos online. Um, the content is just fantastic, man. Um,
Hey, yeah, thanks a lot.
yeah, yeah,
Trying to post more often, but trying to focus more on quality versus quantity. But yeah,
yeah.
trying to post uh, a bit more every month.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think sometimes people just they want to pump videos out all the time just for the sake of having a solid stream, and I don't know if that's necessarily always the best way to do things.
I mean, I think it's really depends on what you're trying to like accomplish. I mean, it's if you're dealing with like YouTube or Instagram or whatever, they they kind of incentivize or force you to post every day or just the more you post, the more they'll show you to other people.
Hmm.
But I mean, I'm I've got my own. I'm not really too worried about likes or how many views you get. Yeah, it's great, but if that's all you're focused on, then I think you might lose focus of what you're doing.
Right, right. I mean, you can post. Uh, I mean, I think the content creator that comes to mind is Sam Hyde. Um, he just posts like so many. He used to post so many random videos all the time of just nonsense. But he gained a following because he posted so often. And for him, I mean, for him, it was a lot of just like him joking around. But if
Right.
you're someone like in your position where this is like starting to be your profession, and pretty well is the quality that you want to put out is different, right? It's like you don't always want to be um, I don't know. It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing, especially if you're just not focused on gaining likes and attention, but you're actually more interested in building quality content for people to look at and like quality content to add to your portfolio, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of the way that I look at it, at least right now for myself. Like you're doing it for multiple reasons, and I mean, ultimately, you need to be doing it because you enjoy it, and
Hmm.
you need to be doing it. Like it's kind of like, I mean, you need to have a creative outlet, and otherwise, you go insane, and that could be whatever that it's painting or drawing or or filmmaking, there's or comedy or whatever it is, writing.
Yeah.
And so like that's how I use it for me while building a portfolio to um, further myself, doing this, like you said, like for a profession. But
Hmm.
for me, that's kind of, I'm not, I'm doing things, I'm trying to do them my own way that I feel will benefit me later, instead of
Yeah.
and trying to make films or make content that I feel I will be proud to look back on, in years, instead of just, I think there's there's I mean, given the way that the internet works now, there's you're the more you post, like I said, the more you get in return. But how much of what you post now are you going to be proud of later? And I think that there's, for me, like, yeah, I'm focused more on the quality over quantity. But if you can do both, then hey, there you go. That's how you get to the top, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. But it's good that you don't have like because I think the internet's changed so much for people, has changed so much for content creators and just everything in general. You no longer have to have some giant infrastructure behind, for instance, guys like yourself, where it's a giant infrastructure 20 or 30 years ago where they would do all the logistics behind everything. They'd be like, okay, this is the type of camera you're going to use. These are the people you're going to bring. This is how you're going to shoot. This is where you're
Yeah.
going to shoot. And there was I find almost it was like I mean, based just on like my this is totally anecdotal, but my parents' experience in the entertainment industry, um, they told me that it was so to be like a creative and an artist, it was almost like you like when they tell you when they said you were selling your soul, you were selling your soul not necessarily in numbers, but you were selling your soul in sort of like the creative fashion as well, because everyone had a hand in how your art and how everything that you were trying to create and produce out to show the world who you are as an individual. Kind of everyone had a hand in it, and everyone wanted to do it their own way, and besides the artist's way. And
Yeah.
I think it's really um, like it's really put the power back inside of the hands of the content creators. And I mean, you know, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's always a good thing. Like, I mean, you can get videos like the girl who shut up YouTube, and you get her, and she just is put out horrible videos. Like
Which one
they
is
were
this?
uh oh god, the girl who went into YouTube and with a gun, the YouTube headquarters, and
Oh,
never really did anything, just like just shot in the air. Apparently, I don't think she killed anyone, but
okay.
um the anyways, so but she was mad because she didn't receive a lot of views on her videos. It's like, but her
Oh,
videos were terrible.
right.
Like, um, I mean,
Well, and what I mean that goes to show, there's a couple different problems there, and one is that people nowadays are tricked by likes and by that attention. Ultimately, is what it all boils down to. And I mean, it sure, of course, it feels great when people are paying attention to you and giving you likes or whatever. But at
mhm,
the same time, it's if that's what your life is, and that's what it's an addiction, and we don't even realize that we're addicted. That's how all this, I mean, that's how, I'm once that's the first step of addiction, is admitting you're addicted. But if
yeah,
if everyone's doing it, and these are things that have kind of changed us in a very short period of time, you know
yeah,
someone's entire life depends on what other people think of them, and that's a big problem. And for someone like that, I mean, to go to that length, there's clearly something else wrong with them.
yeah. Oh,
But
totally, totally, man. It's not just, and I don't think it's just the videos that she's putting out, and it's there's a lot more going on than what meets the eye. She,
at the same time, though, she doesn't also understand uh, that her videos aren't good, and
yeah,
that's subjective. But at the same time, there's uh, you
yeah,
know that's, hey, you know what, as a creator and an artist or filmmaker, that's something that's tough to do, because you have to be you have to be objective of your own work. And
hmm,
I think, for myself at least, I can be the harshest critic, and I think that's what can prevent you from creating more, and or prevent you from getting started. And that can be anything.
yeah,
It's just being too hard on yourself. And I think we really are our own worst enemy. But
absolutely, man.
with that being said, it also makes you better, and it forces you to be more critical of yourself,
Hmm.
and it makes you be more more self-aware. And that that's a very important quality to have, I think. If you can't see yourself, or at least you can't be harder on yourself, then you can really lose touch with reality, or with maybe how other people might see you, whether that matters to you or not. it's
Yeah.
it's, it's something important to do, I think.
Yeah, well, hey, and it's a really fine line. And sometimes we really lose those levels of perception, especially in a world where everything seems to be filtered and quite honestly curated to your needs and how you want to look at the world. Like for instance, you could be looking at an Instagram model and you could be seeing what how wonderful her life is, and how amazing things are for her, and how things have just sort of blown up, and she has 100,000 followers, and she just is. It looks on the surface like she has just has her shit together in the best possible way. And then what you don't see is that her mother has cancer. Her, uh, she actually doesn't work just as an Instagram model. She works at a gas station as like a pump monkey. Um, all these like stupid, all these like her best friend betrayed her, etc., etc. So you don't see that level of tragedy in her,
Yeah.
that really manifests itself, and that makes people admirable. People who are there actually become admirable. And I think we've kind of lost touch with that in terms of social media. And it's one of those things where when you're out, and I'm sure you've experienced this, but when you're out in the natural world, and when you're out experiencing things besides sitting online, looking at some
Yeah.
bullshit news story on Twitter, and when you're actually outside, and when you're actually outside doing something that is not just like productive in the means of how you want to making money, but just productive in the sense of what you're using your hands, you're getting yourself involved. Whether that's like woodworking, or whether that's even
Sure.
just to writing poetry, doing something besides just looking at curated Instagram videos and
Well,
curated information online.
going for a run, or I mean, all these different things I think are connected to that. And I think that, and some of those ideas are things that I'm trying to put into my own work. And it's tough to talk about some of those things also,
Mm,
without sounding, like something that other people don't know, or that you're better or something. But there's a way to talk about some of those things, and everyone can just understand, or just accept, like, okay, yeah, like, it does actually feel better when I'm out in nature and I'm away from my phone.
mhm.
I do actually, these are things that do actually make a difference to me. And
Right.
I think that like for me, that's one of the biggest reasons why, I do try to spend more time out in nature. And my work, like, there came to a point, how do I do what I want to do more often, and make that, a part of how I can make a living.
Right.
And it's just kind of, setting a goal, and combining my interests into one. But,
Yeah.
like, there needed to come a point, there's all this time up to that I didn't realize that I was not doing what I needed to for myself. And that part of
Right.
that is you being too connected, being, the internet's amazing, but it's a tool, and it's all about how you use it, how often you use it.
Hmm.
And if social media is a part of that,
Hmm.
it does behave like a drug. And you just, you automatically just, whether it's, on your phone or on your computer, I think there's that temptation, and it's just a habit. You just click the same icon, or you tap it. It's like you do it without even thinking about it. And that's what's hard. Oh, just for a second. And then it's like, what has
Yeah.
affected you?
Yeah.
Every single thing that you consume affects you in a way. And whether it's consciously or subconsciously, it
Yeah.
affects you. It could be a movie, it could be it's advertising's like the big one. It's You're always being advertised to, and you don't think about it.
Yeah.
uh but social media, how other people are living, like you said, there's they're only sharing part of their lives. I mean, it's Black Mirror kind of stuff, which is real. And, like, we have lost touch with I think, ourselves, in a way, by being, whether it's putting things out there to other people, and then looking at what they have, and like, shit, I need to be better than them, or I
Hmm.
need to have what they have. And then you just feel inadequate.
Hmm.
And it's in the end, it's just, everyone's kind of like a part of a big lie that nobody really knows, because, well, I don't know what that person's lying about, or they're not lying, but hiding, like,
Yeah.
you're only we just need to kind of, I think, focus more on our own lives again in a way. And part of that,
Yeah.
I think, does have to do with just kind of backing off from technology a little bit and going back to a natural existence in a way. Like,
Well, at least in the sense of when you're looking at social media, you being able to identify like internally what that feeling is. As soon as that feeling starts to creep up when you see someone, oh, she's in New Zealand, or he's over in Europe doing something, or they're at their whatever, right? They're at some music festival. But being able to realize that what that feeling is, and how that feeling of jealousy and almost more or less envy, that
yeah,
doesn't benefit you, right?
yeah, but
And
I think there's one thing to realize, that there's a you having a feeling about that. and
exactly.
and but the and this is comes down to like a self-awareness in a way. And it's I mean, you'd have to then actually understand, well, why am I feeling this way? It's not
Mhm.
that you're feeling envious or jealousy or anger or whatever. It's not the fact that you're feeling this way. It's why are you feeling this way? And you're
Yeah,
feeling this way because you're not doing those things yourself, and you
right.
want to be, or you think you want to be, but you're
Yes.
not doing something that you know you need to be doing.
Mhm.
And so you feel guilt. And instead of coming to that realization, you're going to put a feeling on someone else and project your own inadequacy on someone else.
Mhm.
And that's in the end, what could just be cured is by stop looking at what other people are doing and just start doing what you know you need to be doing.
Right. And I 100% agree. And there's the other part of it where, human, where we have the ability, and we have mirror cells. So like when we look at something that's happening, for instance, like when we're watching a hockey game, and when we see a hockey game going on, this is just an example because the Leafs game's on tonight. Um, but or when you're watching a
Beliefs.
fight, or when whatever you're watching, when it's sports related or media related, you're seeing the neuron is a neuron that basically it fires, and it projects an image. It doesn't literally manifest an image, but it basically acts when an animal observes another animal doing something. And what it does, it allows the animal to understand, and it wants the animal to sort of mimic the behavior. And it's a recent phenomenon that scientists have discovered, because it's not an ether. It's not that these feelings and emotions are coming from some ether somewhere in the vast cosmos. But no, these are real feelings that you can learn to control, and that once you're aware of that, you can kind of become, not I'm not saying do a 12-step process, right? Like you're some sort of an addict, right? Not you, but people. But when they work and they realize that they have these feelings, and then they just kind of identify what those feelings are, and they work through it. And that when they see someone online doing something incredible, that the feeling of envy and jealousy, it's not them, right? That those feelings, it's not necessarily them, to the entire degree. I mean, the other side of that is, okay, maybe you should analyze and look at what's going wrong in your life to make you
Yeah.
feel that way. Why are
Yeah.
you feeling inadequate? Why are you feeling like every time you go online, you feel like a bag of shit? But at the same time, understand that if you go online and you see all these glamorous images of people driving Ferraris and getting the latest and greatest iPhone or whatever it might be, right? That if that is something that is part of your value system, and if it's not part of your value system, then just don't fucking worry about it. Like, really, don't worry about it. And
Yeah, but I completely agree. But it's also kind of like a catch 22, because to be kind of conscious of those things, then one would have to be conscious of the other, kind of like,
yes, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
still, this social media and stuff can affect anyone, and you can still be a victim, and at any point. But
Hmm.
you're the notion of like, yeah, not being to be able to think, to be able to be aware of that of yourself.
Hmm.
You should be able to prevent those other things because, like you said, it's your value system. Now, I have different values, you have different values, but
Hmm.
it's still uh I think in the end you need to be aware of just like of how you feel in the moment and why, and like that's what you say, like what you were just saying before. um
Yeah.
and it's just like it's a slippery slope because it's it doesn't, I don't think it matters who you are, eventually you're going to be influenced, and it's not always going to be in a positive way.
Yeah.
Um, but I think a part of that is because we have less control over what we see than we used to, and
Yeah.
really these platforms, they're just meant for marketing. That's all they're for,
Hmm.
and they're not the same purpose it was once. I guess 10 years ago or whatever.
Hmm.
To connect people. While you can still do that,
Hmm.
it seems I don't know if it's being used, you know, the way that we all would benefit the most. Uh,
Yeah, and I think because it's such a new thing that we're still trying to work it out. Like I really do think that we're still trying to work it out. But the problem is when you have large tech companies like Facebook who realize that the way to keep people involved and to keep people using the site is by constantly showing them outrage, and people aren't even aware of that. That the Because if you were to see someone like, hey, I just graduated from school, like, I'm getting my shit together, oh, good job, Bob, like, good for you. But if you have someone that goes on there and they go on some racist or some ridiculous political tangent, and it gets a bunch of people upset, and then you get in there and you get involved in the mix, you're probably going to go back and you're going to keep engaging with those people, and those people are going to keep engaging with you, because it's good, and because it's good for business. Facebook is going to keep showing
yeah,
you that. They're going to be able to keep showing you more ads and advertising. But also it's the fact that it's a way to keep people coming back. And
yeah, yeah. Well,
it's
the notification, little red symbol, like I think they've talked about, when the creators of Facebook, realized the power of different features, and that was one of them. And it's like they put that notification in, and you see that little red thing, or you know you it's like you don't know what it is, and so you just have to click on it, like, oh, what is it,
yeah,
in your mind. That's it's like kind of, it's the same mechanism, I think, in a way, like gambling, because you don't know, you're excited for what's going to happen next, kind of thing, and it's out of your control, and it's a lottery,
yeah,
and then it's like, oh, it's just someone that wants you to like their stuff, or it's just like something that they're trying to get your attention on because
hmm,
you haven't spent enough time on their platform, so they're going to tell you, to join so and so's, page or something. Like,
hmm,
they have these ways of getting people, and they figure out how to get more people, you know, how to get them back more frequently, or the whole scrolling mechanism. That they're all different things that we don't even realize that they're studying about us, how we use them, so that we keep using their product more. And I think that's something we don't think about, is that these social media platforms are actually just products, and we're using them, and then the product uses us more than
right,
we have any idea.
yeah,
And that's, I think, when you were saying we don't know what's going to happen because it's a new technology, it's a new phenomenon.
yeah,
It's we all we know is that it has already affected us, and I think in a more negative way than we have any idea. And
yeah,
is this going to change? Because it seems like we're being used, and whenever there's any criticism, the people that could do something about it are so old they don't even know how to use Google.
right. They don't even know how to. I think it was in Congress where the modem stopped working and they didn't know how to turn it back on. I think that was an actual thing. And
Something ridiculous.
Yeah, and Mark Zuckerberg was the only one that could turn it back on during the hearings.
Oh
And
my.
it's so funny because it's like, wow, like you expect these people like these guys, they don't know anything about it. They don't even know how it works. They're like they have no idea how it works. And that's the big problem, is that we don't have the, and I'm not saying that I'm for regulation in this sense. I'm not saying that I'm against it, but
Right,
there
exactly.
needs to be some serious overwatch on just holding companies like this accountable, because it's the same idea that when you, if you were to go to a car dealership and you buy the newest car, that okay, so even though the model information and there's analytics on the model information and what people are buying, the car dealership still has an onus of responsibility to keep your personal information safe, like where you live, what websites you were visiting prior to going there, what you had for lunch, quite literally. Whereas Facebook doesn't have that onus of responsibility. It doesn't have that I guess that infrastructure set up around it. There's no one overwatching it. So Facebook naturally, just like any business, that if for some reason that is unregulated and hasn't been checked for power, when the power system becomes too not even corrupt, because it's not corrupt,
Right.
but just when power becomes unchecked, it can become a dangerous thing. And I think we're seeing that now with Facebook, and we're beginning to see that now with platforms like Twitter, and
Yeah.
what have you. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like it becomes a dangerous thing, because what we're not talking about here is, I'm not talking about like free speech regulation on Twitter and Facebook. I'm talking about the selling and the use of data and user information to influence stock prices, for instance, or influence advertising revenues, or and what have you.
Sure.
And I think,
Well, I mean, they're just in advertising in general to sell
mhm,
your information to advertisers. And
yeah,
that, I mean, it seems like anything in this world comes back to, advertising in a way. Like that's where revenue comes from.
I mean, in the especially well in the West, yeah, in the West, it's a totally strange thing, that we've built this model, and that we believe so wholeheartedly that this is the only model that we can use. And I'm not saying go smash capitalism. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that we believe that the ad based model of getting content is the only way of generating some sort of revenue system. That I mean, I haven't figured it out yet. I mean, that's kind of why I'm here. But
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if there's definitely other models that people can follow, and it's hey, maybe China will come up with the next greatest thing. I don't know, but I think something else will follow suit, and it's crazy.
And they're
Um,
part of the game too. I mean, I think I don't know that anyone's really outside of that game now. I
no,
think that's kind of I think part of the problem is that, like, how do we what's the step to get out of this model? Well, we don't even really have any other ideas, but we do know that this has kind of become a bit of a problem when everything is run through advertisement, and
right.
but it's not like it's new. It's like this has been going on for like 100 years, probably. To the point of, like, the age of advertising, like when these psychology methods, you know,
Hmm.
how can we make money from understanding how the human brain works?
Right.
And
Literally,
then
that's one of the reasons why psychology departments were funded in the first place. Uh,
right,
and it's true. And but I almost think we're hitting a new medium here, where what you're seeing with, for instance, content creators and guys like yourself, and creators like yourself, where what they're doing is you're creating content that isn't centered solely around them. And I think that to me that's a cool thing to see. And it's not like you're,
around themselves, you mean?
yeah, just about who they are as like like I hate to use the term influencer because I feel like it's so
Yeah.
overused and I feel like it has no meaning anymore. Um, but
Yeah.
is that it's not when you're creating your content, it like when I look at your content, it's I'm not looking at it from the perspective of uh oh, hey, this is Matt doing all this cool shit, right? This is
Yeah.
no, these are awesome natural landscapes that you can experience that exist. And like, I'm just wondering, how are you like, what's the creative process behind that in particular? Like, how do you come up with something? How do you decide, okay, we're gonna go out and we're gonna shoot in Banff, or we're gonna go shoot
Right.
out west? Like, what's the methodology behind that? Like, how do you set that up?
Uh, well, part of that, I mean, it's I think it's hard to do things your own way nowadays because even your own ways is someone else's way, and
Right.
our own thoughts are someone else's thoughts to at the end of the day. But I think if I think a lot of people online are just doing what other people are doing, and there's a lot of like literally just copying, and I don't know how much thought kind of goes into a lot of it anymore. Like for me, the greatest thing is the most important, and what I'm trying to focus most on is storytelling and becoming a better storyteller. And a big part of that is telling stories that I think are worth telling, or that I want to tell, or that bring me into the natural landscape in a way. And
Hmm.
um, I think that there's a lot of the pressure to be the person in front of the camera.
Hmm.
Like I'm just talking YouTube, and my focus
Hmm.
has never really been YouTube.
Hmm.
Um, and I do regret not becoming a part of it way sooner. And all the times I thought, I don't. It's whether it's too late now, or I don't really care, or I didn't know what I wanted to share or make, kind of thing. And
Right.
and nowadays, I mean, I think the golden age of that internet period of of like YouTube and stuff like that, where all these guys, you can still get big, but like it's a little more difficult, I think, in different ways, to make to now start and get to have a million subscribers. The
Well,
guys that haven't had a
yeah.
million subs now have been doing it for 5, 6, 7 years,
Right.
and you can make a living from these platforms. But
Right.
I think that once that becomes your focus in a way,
Hmm.
you lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing. And I think for me, that's what I'm trying to like stay true to. And yes, I would the goal is to make a living from doing exactly what I want, and to tell meaningful stories, and to
Hmm.
uh you know talk about important issues, and to promote uh you know going out into nature, and
Yeah.
into I think living, feeling alive, and going and doing what you don't know you need to do. Like
Hmm.
inside, I feel like I found for myself, like I had to figure out what, it's like, why am I not feeling happy or fulfilled, or why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? And I realized part of that is I'm just too comfortable, and too it was just too easy to just kind of exist. And
Hmm.
it's like there's something lacking. And like I can't say it's the same for everyone, but that's when I started realizing, well, when do I feel the most alive and the happiest and fulfilled? And that's often when I'm out in nature, or
Yeah.
it's often when I'm out doing something different, and it's a cliche to say, outside the comfort zone. But once you realize actually how much our life is based on being comfortable,
Hmm.
then you realize that there's actually something to be said about doing something that's challenging, or doing something that you're not used to, and how that
Yes.
makes you feel, and how your brain works.
Hmm.
And to me, that's a big part of like why I'm doing what I'm doing, or what I'm trying to do. And that's a big part of what I'm trying to put into my work. And I'm reaching, it's like one step at a time with what I'm trying to accomplish, but I'm getting closer and closer to sharing the work that I actually want to share, and to create.
Yeah.
And part of that is it takes time, and it's planning what that is, and it's not just, going out and, you know if everyone, it's like that saying is like, well, if it's like an easy thing and everyone can do it, then it's just not as valuable.
Right.
And that's part of what I'm trying to, I'm trying to do things that, that are a little more different, or I'm trying to do them in my own way, or, and I don't, maybe that's just a lie I'm telling myself. I don't know,
Mm,
but
mm.
I'm trying to, I try to be, self-aware, and that's where we can be too critical of ourselves. And,
Right.
but, I also realize that a big thing that people connect with is seeing another person and hearing another person's story, like
Right.
online, and you
Right.
you develop like almost like a relationship in a way with this person, and that's just never really been something that I really felt was important to me, was like, or that I wanted to do, whether I just didn't want to, go in front of the camera, or, as much, or whatever the reasoning is.
Hmm.
A big part of it is like, well, who am I to tell other people what to do? And,
Hmm.
that's a tough balance, to make, I think.
Hmm.
And I think that's just part of my own, like, self critique. But, you know,
Right.
uh, I think that's one of the things that I think about a lot is, well, I don't want to be, the person that people are like, who's this guy telling people how to think or how to live or what to do or whatever. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I just try to just kind of do it. And
Yep.
I don't really point the camera at myself as much. And like my next project I'm working now, it's my Nature of Travel series, and it's about pointing the camera at other people, other, artists or creators, adventurers, outdoorsmen, and going on a trip with them, and kind of seeing their perspective, and what it is that that they think when they're out there, and why do they live the way they live. And, in a way, I think we, like for me, I realized, what am I doing? Why am a friend of mine asked me, why are you working so hard? So I was
Hmm.
telling him, like, man, I'm burnt out, and I just, like, I'm done. And
Hmm.
so why are you working so hard? And I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
And I couldn't figure that out. And I realized I was just doing that because that's what I was doing to distract myself from, you know, doing something about my life.
What
And
you really wanted to do, and like what
exactly.
you really had. Yes. Yes. Um, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of have to go through a little bit to realize what you got to do. And I mean, how did like what like how did you realize that, oh, this was it, like film, like and that
You
sort
know,
of like cinematography and that side of things, like how did you realize that, oh, this is what I really have a really good, like, you have this itch for this itch where it's like, I gotta do it, man, like I gotta, this is how I'm
yeah.
gonna express myself. And like how did you realize that, like?
Well, like I studied film production in university,
Mhm.
at the University of Windsor, and so that was always. I mean, I didn't know even that when I was taking that program at first, that it was something that I, you know was even, I'm passionate about. Like, I enjoyed that kind of stuff, and it was cool. But it
Mhm.
wasn't until like my third year in that where I was like, okay, this, there is something here that I love, and I'm able to, express myself in a certain way, or I'm good at, this and this. And I first got
Mhm.
into it through the audio side, and it was just, that's how I got into, to film, from, recording, crappy jam practices here with my buddies. And then I started, okay, well, I can record audio for, film. And then it led to this. And then next thing I know, I graduated and moved to Toronto. But when
Yeah.
I was there, I just found myself, I stopped creating altogether, and I was just working on sets, and, just doing anything to get my foot in the door, or volunteering even. It's just like, you doing whatever I could to be a part of this world. And I mean, that was amazing experience, and it gave me a great understanding. But once I then got my foot in the door and I started working, and this was my life, and I didn't have anything else, and I was working 16 hours a day, I came to, it's like in your life, you come at different crossroads down the path, but it's often dealing with similar issues. And like, for me, that was one where I was like, what is going on? Why are you working this much, and you do need to get experience so that you are more skillful and you have a better outlook and you understand things better,
Yeah.
and that helps you later in your life, and it helps you figure out what you do and don't want to do.
Oh,
And
totally.
these things, they're essential, but it's like, how long do you live in that? How long is this your reality, and how long do you
Hmm.
want to live like that? And I
Hmm.
think that there is, and that's very difficult to come to that, to make that choice.
Yeah.
But like, for me, like, I was like, okay, I have to do something else. And so when I stopped working on, on sets in the assistant director department, I I thought, what is it that I really do like to do that's creative? And that was, being a video editor, and I loved editing, and I focused on that, and then I started getting jobs with that, and then I worked at a small company, and I loved it there. That was maybe one of the best jobs I've ever had, because it was great guys. It was a small place. We got
Yeah.
along really well, and it was just fun.
Yeah.
And I loved that place. But then I was like, the next step for me was I worked at an ad agency, and I did that for like 2 years, and that was an incredible experience, and in so many different ways. And you're not conscious of how you're better than you were yesterday, and or things now that you didn't know last week. You don't process it like that, and so you just kind of, you don't even realize how much better you are than you used to be. And
Mm.
that's like something that we have to, I think, also be like conscious of, is like,
Yeah,
we're
man.
not we're not as good right now as we're going to be, and ourself in the future is going to laugh at our current self.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, like, if you're that confident in your current self, like you should really make sure that you have a reason to be, or and not in a negative way, just like, you can lose yourself by being like overly confident. And that's something that I realized, like, holy crap, I'm so much better than I used to be, and I know so much more. And but you don't realize that,
Hmm.
and not that I was like overly confident or anything, but you don't realize that you're like, oh wow, I really didn't know anything.
Right. Right. And I think it's a humbling experience when you come across that, and when you realize, and you look back and you realize how much you've grown as an individual, and how much you realize how discipline and how things like that can really pay off. And it makes you want to go back for more. And you're like, okay, now what are other ways that I'm not really improving, and how can I get better? And are there people that I know that are kind of following the same path?
Yeah.
And I think it can be a horrible thing, man, when you're surrounded by people who don't want to, like, not even improve themselves, like they start a company or whatever, right? But just they don't want to kind of enjoy their fucking lives, and really
Yeah.
enjoy what it means to be a human being. Like, I'm not saying like go out and backpack and do all that, because for some people that's not feasible. But for some people who just aren't passionate about something, like whatever that might be, whether it's you know doing stuff outside like bushcrafting, or
Yeah.
computer programming, or comedy, or whatever it might be. But if you don't have that, and if you aren't surrounded by those people who are enjoying their lives to a certain degree, and I don't mean become self-indulgent, because I think that could be pretty dangerous, but do it in a way that if you're not harming anyone, and you're just kind of enjoying yourself, and you're enjoying your experience, because you probably only have at most 60 good years on this earth, from the time when you're like 10,
Yeah.
right? Or
Yeah.
because when you're
Sure.
before 10, you're like, what the fuck do you know? And even after then.
Sure.
But
Oh, it
uh
took. Then you realize, when you thought you knew, you didn't know. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
man.
It's like, oh, hey, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm grown up now. And then, like, you realize 5 years later, like, oh man, I was still a kid.
Oh yeah, totally. Like, even one of those things where it's you, like when you're in your 20s, man, it's a weird thing. It's a weird
Yeah.
thing, because sometimes people, they have this predisposition that it's like, oh, don't worry, man, I have it all figured out. Don't worry, I got it all figured out. It's like, well, okay. And I'm not saying don't grow up, but at the same time,
Yeah.
if you're like a 27-year-old political figure, right? 10 years ago, you were 17, and you were
Yes.
probably smoking and drinking and going to parties, and you were a fucking idiot, and you're
Well, even
probably
if you weren't doing those things, you
yeah.
still were a 17-year-old, child, and you still had not lived anything worth, telling other people how to live yet. And
Oh,
I
totally.
mean, that's well, that I think in general that just leads back to this, the biggest problem now is just everyone else not living their own life, and whether it's analyzing other people's lives or telling other people how to live theirs,
Oh,
it's
to
just it's too much.
yeah. Yeah, no, totally. It's like don't don't do that. No, don't go run a marathon, right? No, no, no. You shouldn't go and I think there's a good reason for it. Like obviously there's if someone's trying to give you advice, like, okay, man, you're making like $100,000 a year, you have like a mortgage, you have 4 kids and a wife, probably shouldn't, quit your job and drop everything and go and move to
Sure.
the other side of the world, right? There's reasons there's certain levels of reasonability, but
Yes. Yeah.
um if you're just a kid and you're just kind of like, oh, well, how am I figuring this out, and what does it mean to be a person, go and fuck up and do different things, and break out of that routine of being uh like a 21-year-old kid working at some manufacturing plant doing something they have no connection to, just so they can go and buy a few new things to mate with
Sure.
some girl from their hometown. And it's like that to me. I mean, maybe I'm speaking from my own experience, and maybe I'm just, this is who I am, and that's not me, because I saw that, and I saw people fall into that trap, and I don't think
Yeah.
it's a good thing. I really don't, because I think we live in such unique times right now where whatever you kind of want to do, like people like yourself, where you're like, hey, I want to get down to, you're telling me I don't have to go in the coal mines and dig out coal for the rest of my life to have some sort of meaning. You telling me that we live in a time where I can uh pursue my own creative endeavors, and maybe it might suck for a while, but eventually it will pay off. Yes, you can
Yeah.
do that now. I just don't think people realize that, and I don't think people realize that in the same way as people are still going and getting university degrees in some bullshit, right? They don't
Yeah.
realize that, and I'm not saying university isn't useful, because it definitely is. It's definitely teaching, people like myself new skills and things that I wouldn't have considered. But there are certain ways to do things from 50 years ago that I feel like we're kind of still doing, that we haven't
Yeah.
really evolved and we haven't adapted to. And in some aspects, we've kind of gone too far, like with the Instagram thing, right? And with advertising, like we've kind of gone too far with how we're advertising and how we're marketing, and that we kind of have to bring that back down to earth. But at the same time, there are some cases where it's like, okay, you have the ability now to, if you want to become whatever, right, you can probably do it. It's going to suck for a while and you're going to have to grind it out, but if you really want to do it, the
That's the
possibility for
beginning
you
of
to do it
anything,
is
though.
there.
Anything worth doing is you do have to work hard for, and whatever way that might mean. That's just it's going to be becoming the best or really good at anything takes hard work, and it's like practice. But I
Mm-hmm.
think what you were just talking about is it's like a part of like something bigger, and that's that's something that I don't know the answer to myself, but I think
No, neither
about,
do
and it's
I.
like, do it. Okay, not everyone is the same person,
Right.
and there are many different reasons for why we might think differently. Ultimately, anything, for in my opinion, comes down to, for the most part, how you've been nurtured and your life experience. I'm a nurture versus nature kind of guy. That's what I believe. And yes, there is still, nature is a part of who you are, and you have genetics and you have these predispositions and these things. But I think, in so many cases, most cases, it is how you are nurtured and developed, and how the person you are is a result of your how you were treated and how you're raised and all your life experiences.
Yeah.
And maybe even so, maybe there still is differences between people that we don't understand, and maybe nature does play a bigger role than I realize. All I know is that I know how I feel, and
Mm-hmm.
and I can't I don't know how much I should. That's for me one of the things that I don't know. It's like how much of my experience is other
Hmm.
people's experience,
Hmm.
and how much of my experience should I be promoting to other people
Hmm.
to experience their way. And
Hmm.
because we all might feel like our way is better for everyone. I mean, that comes down to like that's like politics.
Yeah,
Like,
man.
but I think that I mean, because I mean, yes, I feel like many things would be helpful to other people, but I also
Hmm.
realize that other people might feel the same way and have that about and say, oh, he would be a lot happier if he did this or that, and or he'd
Yeah.
be a lot better if
Yeah.
he did this or that.
Uh-huh.
So I and I still don't have the answer, but I think what I feel makes the most sense, and I think maybe the only thing we can do is just if we live it ourselves
Hmm.
and or live it more and instead of worrying about how other people are living theirs more, because still that by trying to improve, it's like by trying to improve society or other people or whatever, we are not focusing on ourselves, we're focusing on other people. And I'm not saying that to people that clearly need help, but
Hmm.
in this way, like trying to influence people in
Hmm.
certain ways
Hmm.
instead of living it ourselves. And
Hmm.
I think part of
Like
that
they don't,
is
you don't do it organically. Like that's the thing is it's
it's like
it,
preaching. It's like preaching it too. There's too much preaching in a way. And I think if you focus on preaching, people aren't open. And that's part, maybe it's a psychological thing. Is like if you're trying to tell other people how to live and
that's a
what to
good point,
do,
man. Yeah.
we're not open to that. And
That's a
I think
great point.
you see someone else do it, and
Yeah.
then you respect it, and you want to emulate that more, and or you're open to listen, you
Yeah,
know?
no, totally. Totally. And you're more open and you're more likely to be open to their ideas. And yeah, I think that's one of the things about the in terms of the social media social justice culture. I think that's why a lot of people who don't necessarily want to follow a sort of or subscribe to a doctrine like theirs, or even some sort of doctrine of religion for that matter. When they hear people preaching about something, and when they hear them, it's just like, okay, I'm gonna zone you out right now. I'm drowning you out. Like you're just white
Yes.
noise. You're like the preacher
Yeah.
on the TV, the evangelical preacher who's just going off. It's like, I don't, okay, you might be saying something really profound right now that might actually make a difference, but and there might be something really useful in what you're saying. But right now,
Yeah.
man, I'm not listening to you. I'm not even entertaining the fact that you could be saying something because you're
Yeah.
screaming, because you're yelling, okay, because you're trying to tell people how to fix the world, yet you can't even do something right. Like you
Right.
can't even fix your own car. Like you can't even change a
Sure.
tire, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, um like don't be preachy. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes when it comes to and I hope for the best when people can see through the bullshit. I really do. And but the thing is, when you have information bombarding at you all the time where that's so curated, it's difficult to not realize that that's just it's like someone preaching at a a church, or an
Yeah.
evangelical preacher, screaming about, you'll go to hell if you don't do something. It's the same thing. And that's a good point. I never thought about that. I
Well,
it's see
I
I
think part of that is also it comes down to understanding how to be an effective communicator. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think at that point there's multiple issues going. If you actually are with the person at Dundas Square with a sign and you are yelling that stuff, these aren't things that you're going through your mind because you're just so deep into your own faith and in your own belief of what you believe.
Yeah.
That's part of like the whole thing about faith, I guess, is like there's nothing that's gonna steer you wrong. That's I guess it's the double-sided sword in a way. But I think that we I think, like you said, if you're like, let's say social media, you're always telling other people what to do or how to think, and you come off as like you're holier than thou, and
Hmm.
that's something that it's difficult. How do you balance that without going too far, without without seeming like you're full of yourself, or you think you know something others don't know.
Right.
But I think also part of that is like, who are you to be telling me this stuff? Like, who are you're on the same plane as me. Like, don't, who are you to say, to tell other people what to do, because you don't have your stuff figured out, like you were saying, and you're, the same 20 whatever year old that I am, and I those are things that's like, that in itself is like something that I think was like, I certainly don't want to be that person, so I don't want to come off as like this that person.
Right. And
And
especially with the
whether I
content that you create. Like I realize that
yeah
about the films and everything else that you create. It isn't um preachy. It isn't like you're out there, like when I think there's the one where you guys did the video of when you're out in Banff, I think, like around Clearwater,
yeah
right?
yeah
Um that was just, I mean, the first of all, man, the way you guys filmed that, the way, like, that was mind blowing. It was cool. It was really uh it wasn't like your standard sort of nature hike documentary. There was something, it was unique.
What
uh
was unique about it, do you think?
I think just the way, like how you, like, because did you just use natural lighting? You didn't
Yeah,
bring, like, yeah, see, that
yeah,
would, to me, that's a big difference, because I think a lot of people, when you see the photos on Instagram, and when you see the photos on some platform, or some National Geographic video, you don't see the white, what are those things called, the
the
flash
bounce.
stop, yeah, the bounce, that's it. Like,
Yeah,
you don't see all that, right?
yeah,
Whereas, if you kind of even know a little bit about photography, and you know a little bit about like how things are filmed, you can tell that it's not, that it's all done inorganically. And what's cool about the way you were producing that content is that it felt authentic, but at the same time, it felt like you were doing it organically, in a way where, it wasn't forced, right? It wasn't like, okay, well, we're actually going to do this. I need this to be
like
organic.
staged and like pre. Yeah, I think I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Like it's more raw. Like it's kind of, for me, that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is make it make it real, and just live it and document it. Like, that's what I'm trying to kind of do in a way, and that's what that was. And I'll be like, all right, I'll ask a question like just out of the blue, but I don't not. That's
Hmm.
where, in a way, I think certainly the more, it's like your how you produce things changes over time, depending
Yes.
on on your experience, but also, like you're saying before, once there's money involved, things change, or once things get bigger, things change. And
Hmm.
uh that's something that I've thought about, in a way, like, how do I keep making things the way that feels right to me,
Hmm.
especially once, I have to worry about, what other people think, and or I have to worry about meeting whatever criteria or pleasing someone else. And
Hmm.
that is I mean, that's how the entire industry works. How many directors are ashamed of their own movies because they
Oh
didn't
God,
get to
yeah.
make it the way they wanted to. And I mean, that's why I was curious, like, what you thought was, unique about what, how I make things. And that's, I guess, that's a great compliment, to feel like it's authentic, or real, or whatever. And that's
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, I don't know. That's just how I'm doing it, I guess. I know it's hard to be also conscious of your own style to an extent.
Hmm.
And I don't, yeah. So, like, for me, I don't necessarily know what that means. I just know what I like, I put lots of thought into it. But
Yeah.
that's, yeah. I ultimately, making kind of documentary style, trip adventure videos. That's ultimately what I'm striving to do, and in different ways, and ultimately trying to tell different people's stories, different, different areas stories, different parts of nature, and all while promoting. It's like, I think it's in a way, by watching my work, I would be so happy if it made people want to go out and do it themselves.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that's what's like unique about it is that, once again, coming back to the whole preachy thing, you're actually doing it organically in a way where it feels like, as someone who watches your videos, it's like, oh, okay, like this nature is, if you're just some kid in Mississauga or suburbia somewhere and you stumble across this channel and you've never really been out in nature before and you don't really know what it's like, there's still the like what you're able to do, I find, is there's still this like uh romantic side of getting people to look at nature from a perspective that isn't just, hunting and fishing on the Sunday channel that their
Yeah.
dad's watching. But I mean, it's this unique and crazy thing, but it's actually quite beautiful, and there's beautiful landscapes even in your own backyard, like Algonquin
Yeah.
Park.
Sure.
Um, but there's also like how you did it, where it inspired people to get outside, and it inspired people to try to uh, see the natural world from not just the romantic side, like I was saying, but also from the side of like the raw nitty gritty, like with the case when you guys were walking through that trail out west, and you're like, well, we were gonna sleep in this like horrible spot, like that. Not everything in nature is this pristine area,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Not
right.
everything is just this curated and super super organized, like park, like, as much as I
Campground.
campground where everything you have running water. You were able to kind of show the real nitty gritty of what it's like to kind of go off grid and do some backcountry camping for a few days. And
Yeah.
I think
I
that is
feel like
just,
that's like people. I mean, this could just be my opinion, because I've heard, I just absolutely flabbergasted when some people, say, "Oh, I absolutely hate, camping or going out and doing it." It's like, well, I mean, I don't understand what your experience you had that made you feel like that, because it just does not compute to me, and it feels like, I mean, okay, I think, to me, like, there's always a way, like, to get through to someone. Like, I just refuse to accept that idea. And I get some people don't, maybe you're a city slicker or whatever, but I just think
mhm,
it's like, it's a part of human nature of
mhm,
to be outside and to be outdoors. And all we've been doing is building barriers and walls between us and nature to make ourselves feel like less of an animal.
mhm,
And I think that it's important to whatever extent, whether it's just a park or whatever it is, to immerse yourself, in the outdoors, to get outside. And that's when I feel at my worst. It's when I haven't
mhm,
been outside enough, or it's
mhm.
when it's like, all right, now it's time for a trip. I got a buddy. He's like, all right, I'm heading up north, and he does it. He does it, quite regularly. It's like, I've had it. It's time. And
Yeah.
and everyone is different, but I think that I think the more you go out and you kind of push the limits in a way, the more you realize, like, you've kind of just set up walls and barriers to protect yourself from the fear of the unknown, or being uncomfortable, or whatever it is. Like, when we were
Mhm.
hiking the Clearwater River, it was, by the end of the second day, I could barely walk. Like, these cheap Canadian Tire boots that I bought,
Yeah.
they really were a bad choice, because, like, I was in pain, and I was like
Yeah.
walking around like a Sasquatch, like so light on my feet, because it's just like, like, you're so, like, yeah, that sucks. But, like, the you have an accomplishment, that, like, the sense of accomplishment from, from hiking, whatever, 18, 19, 20 kilometers for the day,
Mhm.
and and you've eaten, like, rice and, like, I don't know, whatever, and your meals suck. And there's always things. It all comes down to, like, how you look. Like, it's like, who cares? Like, that's, like, it's not even like a negative in a way. It's like, I don't care. Like, it's being out there, the views. Like, when you see, like I'm the video I'm working on right now is, like, when I went out to BC, and
Mhm.
that was another fork in my life that I was like, I did too much work and I just took off there. I bought camera equipment. I went out there and it was like this first trip I did, with this equipment, and it made me realize, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm on the right path, and by doing this. And when you get to the top of a mountain, you hike and you get up there, it's like nothing else matters, and you realize how many things that you're worried about or that are in your head, how many thoughts you have are kind of pointless to have, or that you're thinking and worrying about the dumbest things. And when you get out into nature, you disconnect, and you allow yourself to disconnect, which I mean, it's not even for me, it's just that it happens. But I mean, if you're used to your phone and things, you might have this addiction, but I think you can overcome it by spending time out there, and you just think clear, and you're just free. It's a freedom.
Yes. Yes.
And we're not having to, unless you're having to actually work to survive. And and on that level, you'll get a lot of, you'll feel so good about yourself by providing for yourself. That's something else that's so easy
totally.
nowadays,
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we all can feel. And I think that I think the state of our mental health right now would all improve by spending more time out there and less time, on our phones. You have to have the desire to. And from having lived in Toronto for like close to 5 years, I realize how difficult that can be. It's not like Vancouver where everything's close. Man, Toronto, Algonquin's somewhat close, and there's this area that's 45 minutes away or whatever. But if you don't have a car,
dude, it's insanely limiting. Like, if you're stuck in a major city and you don't have the ability to get out, like, good luck.
But you don't even, it doesn't even become a part of like your awareness. You're not even conscious of the fact that you're like, you need to get outside the city, and you don't even, because you don't have a car, so you don't even think about it as much anymore. And I mean, thankfully there are, different services, that will bring out like Park Bus or whatever that brings you out to these parks when you don't have a car. That's a great thing. I haven't used it myself, but if I had known about it far earlier, I probably would have.
Totally. Me too.
It's a great idea, and I'm glad that it exists. So for people that don't know, if you don't got a car, look up Park Bus. You can get out to I don't know 5 or 6 different parks in Ontario from Toronto. And but anyway, I think that's
and it's relatively inexpensive too. Like that's the thing, is it's not like you have to spend $800, $1,000 to go to some beautiful area.
Honestly, in my opinion, I don't know what the answer is, but like, it's expensive to go to Algonquin Park. In my opinion, it's expensive to go to these places, and I
yes, it is.
I know that it's justified in certain ways, and I just I think that it can also prevent people from going as much. It prevents abuse, certainly, of nature in those areas, and it prevents overpopulation, because it would just be madness. And I think that there's.
Do you remember a few years? Yeah, a few years ago with the Canada 150.
Yes.
Getting to a park here, good luck. Like,
anything near Toronto has a negative effect of that, and the further you get away from Toronto, the clearer my head gets, I tell you. But it's true though, in a way. You're less influenced by this mass city that has a great effect on the surrounding area.
Like, I mean, I remember I was in where was I? Out west, and I had spent a few days in Vancouver, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta get out of here. Like, this isn't why I'm here. And I was staying with some family members, and it's gorgeous. And I mean, I love that area of the world, in Canada in general, because it's not, at least where they are in Vancouver, it's not like a city, right? So they're in like the South Delta area. So you're not you're far enough away from Vancouver where you really
Right.
avoid all the bullshit, but at the same time you're close enough where you can still enjoy some of the culture that Vancouver kind of has to offer. And you're like a 20-minute ferry
Like East
ride to
Hastings, lovely, lovely
oh,
streets.
oh, a lovely, lovely area. Like that's just the best place in Canada. Um, but the what I was gonna say about out there is I went to Garibaldi for a bit.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just hung out and
Garibaldi is the greatest view I think I've ever seen. That's the video I'm working on right now.
yeah, man, it's a weird thing. Like the
Did you do the
people,
Panorama Ridge hike?
yes, I did. I did that.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where some people say Lake Louise is close, is one of the greatest. I don't know. I don't know.
No, it's not. I've seen Lake Louise too. It's also a hike. It was also a full. It's different. And Lake Louise, if you're down at that whatever that river is, it's just like, oh my
Yeah, I
goodness, it's
forget
a
what it
different
is.
area. For me, like
Yeah.
I think that's kind of an important thing in a way. Is going outside of where it's just tourist. At the same time, you could say, I'm sure lots of tourists do the Panorama Ridge, but it's not an easy hike to do, and it takes time. It's not like you can just get off a bus,
Mm-hmm.
and take a picture. And uh, there's that's part of an issue nowadays, I think, and definitely lots of different parts of the world with the whole tourism industry and how it's affecting these pristine areas. and
Oh, yeah, man. Like it's fuck. I think there
and I
needs
don't
to
know if
be
there's an answer for that though, because
I neither do I. Neither do I. I don't think so. I think there needs to be a greater at least a greater awareness of having people respect the natural environment in a way where it's like, okay, you see that elk right there? Like I remember going through Jasper National Park a few years ago, and
yeah,
they, people were stopping to get like to try to touch the elk. I mean, I took a photo
yes,
of one, but it's like because it's a crazy thing. It's like no, 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 no. These things are wild animals. Like sure,
sure,
they've been conditioned to tolerate people, but
yeah.
if you
And
piss
that's
it
which is a
off,
bad thing, which is a
yeah,
bad thing. It
yeah,
actually it harms them. It's
yeah,
what gets them killed
yeah,
because of that. And people feed them, and they just, yeah, then they get too close to the road and they get hit, like
right.
that happens all the
And
time out west.
people don't realize that how big of a danger it is. But it's like whoa, 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 like and there's there needs to be a greater awareness of education, I think, in even schooling, because I think the school system hasn't done that good of a job in teaching young people, like especially like people from even like the close to being in nature, like even up here, like the the people don't realize how close they are to nature, but they don't realize how to respect it. And they think, oh, I'm just going to go here, and so much garbage is left all the time.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and not just at provincial parks or federal parks or wherever, but just even at concerts, man. Like the amount of pollution that
Okay.
happens because of like massive concerts. Like I grew up in the music industry. My parents are musicians, so I'm not opposed to concerts, but I think there needs to be a greater
It's not like
awareness.
that stuff like is left there. It's like after a concert, they have cleanup crews and it's all cleaned up.
Yes, yes,
And I think
but
I would say part of that's, I agree, it's a complete mindset thing, and we accept it in certain scenarios, and that's one of them. Like, well, I'm paying I'm paying 100 and whatever $50 to come to the show,
Mhm,
and I'm paying $15 for a beer. I'm
mhm,
not going to leave my spot here to go
mhm.
throw this cup out.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah,
That's a tough one, but you know what? I think that part of that's outside of that. I think it's different now, but how it was for a long time with littering
yeah.
how it was such an acceptable thing is kind
It
of like
was.
mind-boggling.
Yeah, littering, man. Like whenever I see someone uh like throw something out of their window now, I'm like, wait, what? Like, what did you just do? Like, you just threw. Like, I was driving down the road the other day, and this guy threw his bag of garbage. Just literally, I was driving, man, and it was a two-lane road, and he was in front of me, and he just whipped his garbage bag outside of his like passenger window. And I'm like it was a small bag, but I'm like, what the fuck, man? And so I pulled up, like I drove up beside him and be like, dude, really? And well, what did he do? He flipped me off and basically told me to go fuck
Yeah.
myself. And it's like, um, uh, okay, you
Yeah.
just killed. I mean, I'm not about to be like that environmentalist, right? Be like, you just killed those animals, man. No,
Well,
because I think people like,
it's pure laziness. There's no fucking
well,
need
that's
for
what
that.
bothers me about it. That is that it's just fucking laziness, and they're
No.
I don't know, and but I think the new generation coming up realizes that that's a fucked up thing to do. That just
Yes.
throwing
Oh,
out
for sure.
garbage and throwing out random shit is just a really fucked up thing to do, and it's not right, and that there are serious consequences for it.
I
Um,
mean, it's completely avoidable, and like let's say an example, like let's say Algonquin Park or whatever. I remember when I was actually out west in Chilliwack, we did
mhm,
a day hike out there, and we got up to like the top to like where this lake area was.
mhm.
There was just so much garbage everywhere. I couldn't believe it, and I was like, it hurts to see, and it's like it's just such a lack of respect for not just it's not just the environment, it's other people as well. And you're like, I mean, if you brought this here, you can bring it back. Like,
Yeah,
it's not a big deal. Bring a
yeah,
bag, put your garbage in it.
yeah.
It's it like
And
the amount
hey,
of how lazy that is like it's almost just like
hey, man.
infuriating. It's like why?
Yeah, why? Why? And hey, man, maybe it's one of those things where if you had, I don't know, here's an idea. You could maybe get if people uh, brought back their garbage that they packed out, like they packed out, they could get a discount, a 10% discount next time they came, some way to, and I don't like to incentivize people that way, but sometimes you got to
Yeah.
incentivize certain people.
I mean, I don't know. I think, yeah, that's what I'm trying to think of the name of their business, but I think it was Trevor McMur's. He's just like that. His mech thing is similar with
Mhm.
the water, cleaning up the water and the coastlines, and it's a great incentive. I would just love to see, it. I would just love to see people just be more conscious and just less lazy and just
Yeah,
doing it. Like we still got to clean up the garbage there, and there's always going to be people littering. But
right.
I think a big part of it is holding one another accountable.
Hmm.
Like you're going out, like those people that did that are probably not people that are going there by themselves. Like,
Right,
if you're actually going out in nature by yourself, I would imagine you're not going to be littering. Or
right.
at least I I mean not I'm sure there's some people that just don't give a shit, but
Yeah,
if
totally.
you're out there with friends or whatever and someone's leaving some garbage or whatever it is,
Hmm.
like it's like what the hell are you doing? No,
Yeah,
pick that up.
yeah,
Like, come on.
yeah.
And
Personal accountability, man.
and that's how, I mean, that's how we're shaped by our peers, and that's why we do need to hold people accountable. And then
Absolutely.
it's just kind of that's then that person will be like, okay, yeah, that wasn't cool.
Hmm.
Wow. And then hopefully they feel bad about themselves, for a bit, and like, okay, that was stupid. It's not a big deal to carry it back out or whatever. Or like you said, people are throwing out their car window, like, why? You're
Yeah,
gonna stop somewhere, and wherever you stop is gonna have a garbage.
yeah. There's
It
gonna be a garbage can somewhere. Just why, man?
it's
Um,
completely unnecessary. But
yeah, it is.
that's a result of the having more people enter, nature areas. And I I understand that actually, like those, like Algonquin Park, like you bring in money to protect the park from people's garbage and from people's, whatever destruction, and it pays to keep it protected and whatever. And that's, yeah, that's a good thing. It and we need to protect more areas. There needs to be more
Hmm.
protected land. And like one of the projects I'm working on right now is that's the goal, is to protect some unprotected ancient forest up in the Tamagami area. And
Right.
you've got these ancient trees, and who's benefiting by them being cut down? Because
Hmm.
ultimately there's a lot. I get that tree is just a resource, it's a plant, but it's also more than that. And
Well,
you
it's
know,
part
there
of
comes a point.
it's part of a huge ecosystem, and
Yeah,
when you have when you don't respect that ecosystem that has been intact for a few thousand years, and that the when you have old growth forests, you know, sort of uh, um, developing. Because before there used to be this thing called the climax theory in forestry, where every forest basically reached a peak, like a climax peak, and then it would stop. And then that's as big as, or that's as great as it's going to get. And then some sort of natural event's going to occur, or something's going to cause it to basically
or fire.
to be depleted. Right. So natural disturbance, or like a wind event, fire,
Also,
flooding.
though, the First Nations people though are to thank for a lot of our forests because they understood that they needed to be in control and they cultivated a lot of the forests and they understood forest fires, you know,
Right.
and
Right.
those,
Totally.
a lot of the forests that we have are because they planted them and they would, you know, they lived for their future generations. They were conscious of that and they lived not for themselves only, you know. It's like
Hmm.
they're like my, I think 7 generations from now, that's what we're planting these trees for. And like if we all had more of that, like that conscious effort to kind of live for the future and not
Hmm.
just for our kind of selfish selves, like, and over things that are very easy to do
Oh
and really
yeah.
not a big deal, you know.
Yeah. Like,
I
you know,
think we'd all be better off not only right now but for the future.
totally. And being aware of that, and being aware of the fact that that is a reality, right? That's just not going away, and that there are certain aspects and there are certain areas, like for instance, around Tomogamy, and that was like one of the places, North Tomogamy, was one of the places that when I first went like planting the old growth forests up there. But
Yeah,
the it's what's crazy is the fact that the amount of people that just don't know this place exists, right?
that's right.
Like
Yeah,
that somehow that the urban development and life ends at it literally ends at Vaughan, right? Ontario
yeah.
ends at Vaughan,
Well, for a lot of
and
people, yeah,
right, and they don't realize, oh my god, there's this, like, there are places in Ontario where you can drive down a logging road and you might never be seen again. Like
yeah,
that's a real possibility. Like
yeah. Oh, for sure. You can
like
get pretty remote, and I mean, what even for me, like what I, oh yeah, Northern Ontario. No, that's not Northern Ontario. You know where I've
no.
been, like, you know, like whether it's Temagami or Timmins or whatever. Like, I mean, you're
Yeah.
getting there. You know, you're starting to get there, but like really, that's still like middle. You're not even close to where it's really northern
Yeah.
and life's completely different. But like you said, you drive down a road, like you're not going to see anyone. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, totally.
that's kind of a cool thing about being in the backcountry.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the greatest feelings when you're in the backcountry, man, when you can just be alone, and when you're alone with your own thoughts, and you realize what those thoughts are, and you know, like you were saying about climbing a mountain, right? Or like when it's like when you're doing something really difficult and you realize that nature, in a lot of ways, it doesn't give a fuck about you. Like, it doesn't care if you have
That's
kids,
it.
it doesn't care if you have a mortgage, it doesn't give a shit,
It
right?
doesn't care. It doesn't care if you're what color you are, what you
Mm-hmm.
believe,
Mm-hmm.
what you have between your legs. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't care.
Yeah.
That's for me, like, ultimately what, you know, the only thing that I know for sure is it, you know, the only thing that I'm sure about is that nature is a part of us and that we're a part of it. And I, if there's anything that I could consider a, you know, a belief system or like religion, for me it has to be nature, because
Mm-hmm.
everything comes back to it in a way. And
Yeah.
I think in a way a lot of our beliefs, you know, through history still have to do with when we were people living closer to the land or had a different appreciation or different understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, nowadays the only it's the way that people look at it is like this environmental. It's always environmental, and it's not about like, it's not about being a part of nature. It's always always kind of this idea that we're separate, but we still have to
Yeah.
protect it, and
Yeah.
that we're ruining it. But it's like, hold on a second, we're actually like we are a part of it, and like you said, when you go out there, you
Hmm.
realize you are alone, and nothing that's in your brain, the thoughts that you have that another human being put there, none of them
Hmm.
matter,
Hmm.
none of them. And that feeling to me is maybe the most important feeling, or the greatest feeling you can have. And that's what I that's what I want to feel more, is to feel more a part of nature. And it's hard to put that into words, because and it sounds like, yeah, it starts to sound like these ideas of grandeur, and like, oh, it's like something, like that you feel that others don't. No, it's actually just something anyone can feel, and you realize that your thoughts don't matter.
Yeah, and that it's in all of us. Like there,
Exactly.
everything. It's that feeling is in all of us. Like no matter where you go around the world, that feeling of wanting to, like not just belong, but just that feeling of being connected to the natural world it's in all of us, whether you realize it or not. Like it's and some people it takes 50 years for them to realize that, where they're like, whoa, I lived in central London my whole life, and I never like London,
Never
England.
left.
And you never left, and you went out and you're like, whoa, this is a crazy thing. But yeah, man, I think that's probably where we're gonna wrap it up.
Right on.
But fuck, man, it was great talking to you, and
Yeah, same here.
we'll have to do this again. And we'll if I hear of any opportunities in around this area for what you're doing or whatever, like I'll totally send you an email or forward it to you.
Right on, man. Thanks a lot. Appreciate
Alrighty,
it.
no, thank you,
Yeah,
thank you.
great talking to you, man.
Hopefully I'll see you this summer.
That would be great. I'd like that.
Yeah. All right, bud.
All right. You take
All right,
care.
take care. All right,
Bye.
bye.